Welcome to the forecast with Gary Lezak. Bob Lyons is here as well.
I've returned.
He's been on a few times, so we'll talk about that. Hey, listen, thank you for watching on YouTube and on your podcasts, wherever you're listening to it. But again, it is sponsored by, the forecast is sponsored by Results Personal Fitness.
Give him a show. There's the show.
See that?
There you
and
go.
I
That's
just
how you
worked
know.
out. I just did back, traps, and shoulders.
Ooh, that's a day.
I know.
Okay.
It was intense. We did about 30 sets, and it was pretty good. David Schlossman out at Results has been my trainer for 20 years, and he keeps me in great shape.
Does great. You look great.
So
and you're still bringing this energy today after that workout?
I
You're a
probably need
madman.
some water, to be honest with you, so you're going to have to do some talking today. So,
don't tempt me with a good time. All right.
Yeah, Results Personal Fitness is one of our sponsors. Another one is Uphold Home. Uphold your independence in your home. If you're getting on into your golden years, this is a great way to be able to stay at home, get a fitness expert, a health expert. You actually optimize your health by staying at home, and it's less expensive than going into a home. So keep that in mind. It's really cool. Uphold Home.
Like an all-encompassing option kind of concept?
Yeah, you get to stay at home, and then by eating healthier, having a fitness expert, you get in better shape than you've been in your golden years. A great system.
That's fantastic. That's kind of brilliant. I love it. Makes me want. I don't have a sponsor.
Yeah, well,
You came with 2 sponsors, and I have 0.
You can come in and sponsor us.
Well, yeah, I always kind of wanted to be a pitch man. I don't know what I would pitch for though.
Well, let's
if we had a dream sponsor, who would your dream sponsor be?
Weather 2020. Well, that's our company.
Well, isn't that that's kind of logistically and technically accurate as is?
Yeah. Today it's going to be an interesting topic. We're going to talk about weather. Tornadoes. What is a tornado?
Yeah.
Severe Weather Awareness Week is coming up the first week of March. We'll talk a little bit about my experience. We're going to do that. You have some questions for me?
Oh, I have a whole bag
Hold
full
on.
of questions.
Hold on.
Look, I'm patient. I can be patient.
We'll get to that. The weather pattern is cycling right on schedule. This year's pattern is about 7 weeks long. There was just a snowstorm that hit Minnesota, a major snowstorm.
It's a beast right now.
And the mayor of Minnesota was panicking the city. He was literally, there was a panic. He's like, oh my gosh, it's Minneapolis. It's a major snowstorm. It's Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's
you
pretty
guys
much
get major snowstorms.
the standard.
Right?
Yeah.
And so he goes,
called a winter.
This is historic. We need to prepare now. Well, do you know what's amazing? The mayor and everyone forgets what happens real recently.
Sure.
It's a 51-day cycle. That's top secret information.
I know. Wow.
Okay?
Is this safe to be putting on the airwaves?
Yeah.
It's too late. It's out there.
It's out there.
Okay.
7 weeks, but it oscillates. The pattern's oscillating. Minneapolis just had a major snowstorm at the end of February. Okay, and what happened 51 days before? January
Tell
2nd?
us, Gary. I don't know. I don't know. You got to tell me.
January 2nd and January 5th.
January 2nd, January 5th. Was it
They had
cold
a
here?
snowstorm. Did they have 3 inches of snow?
More?
Did
Are
they
we
have
doing a higher or lower
Did they
game?
have 8 inches of snow?
Is this a Drew Carey?
How about a foot?
A foot? They had a foot of snow?
No.
No.
January 2nd
Okay.
to January 5th, in the second cycle of this year's LRC, Minneapolis had a historic snowstorm.
Get out of here.
15 inches officially,
Really?
up to 1.5 feet in the city.
Yep. Okay.
And that happened 50. So they've had 50 days to prepare. This is what Weather 2020 does. You have 50 days to prepare for these events.
Get out of here.
And this week coming up, there's going to be a severe weather outbreak set up that we also predicted 50 days ago. So
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That's kind of incredible. So what was the mayor's definitions of historic? Or do we know? Is it
it's
like
probably just
at this time in
mindless
February?
babble.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
You know, I've watched it happen all the time. You know, when Al Roker comes on and says, half of the United States, 200 million people are in the path of this storm. I'm like, oh, come on.
So I want to start firing off questions right out the gate at you, because the interesting thing here is, so we didn't make it here for 2 weeks because the winter weather here in Kansas City, we weren't able to get here to the studio to do this, right? So obviously the weather kind of affects everything. It was sort of a severe-ish concept. So you obviously have a very interesting relationship with the concept of severe weather. What we're saying here with the mayor, it's hard because you are always forced, you kind of have to marry the concept of entertainment with safety, with weather? How do you, because viewership matters. That's an inevitability in the media game, so we totally understand that. But I imagine there were times when you're on air and you're like, oh, should I be on air? There are probably times you wanted to be on air and maybe they wouldn't let you on air. How do you balance that? With something as delicate as lives hanging in the balance?
Okay, and we're really talking about tornado coverage. Is that what you're bringing up?
Sure. I mean, thunderstorms, tornado coverage is probably seems to be the bulk of it, right? Which we're coming up on seasonal.
Yeah, usually the first week of March is Severe Weather Awareness Week around Kansas City.
Okay.
And then depending on the week, it might vary in other parts of the country. But March, April, and May is when severe weather usually ramps up. Why do we have severe weather season to begin with? Well, you have the Rocky Mountains to the west, and you have the Gulf of Mexico, this huge body of warm air.
Sure.
That's the fuel for thunderstorms, this warm, moist air in the Gulf of Mexico. These geographic boundaries are unique to the United States. When the north-south Rocky Mountains, when the flow comes off the Pacific, it goes upslope over the Sierra Nevada, down into the deserts and into the Intermountain West, then goes back up over the Rocky Mountains and down.
Wow.
And it's usually dry and warmer and drier air as it descends into West Texas, western Kansas, and it creates these things that are called the dry line. But anyway, the flow comes over the Rocky Mountains with energy, and it brings up, when there's a storm, it pulls moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay.
If there was not a warm body of air down to our south, we would not have tornadoes as frequently.
Aha.
The Rocky Mountains and the Gulf of Mexico, those boundaries create the conditions for Tornado Alley and what's sometimes called Tornado Dixie Alley in the southeastern United States.
Well, that's a funny name. Okay.
And so this area, the United States has 75% of the tornadoes of the world. Did you know that?
That is an insane statistic.
75% of all tornadoes in the world.
Is there a theory?
All of the strong ones.
Okay. So, real quick, the ingredients for a tornado, like the perfect ingredients are what? Hot and cold air, right? It's really just when they mix.
Well,
I'm simplifying the bejesus
let me
out
introduce Bob Lyons to you. Bob Lyons is not a meteorologist.
What? See, this is...
But it's okay.
Computer science, yeah. Hot and cold are a very different topic.
Tell us your
in computer
background
science.
real quick, and then we'll get to that.
Oh, that's a good question. I have a degree in computer science and computer engineering. Should I lead with the engineering? Everybody always thinks the engineering was hard.
It's
so maybe
all
I should lead with
impressive.
that. I guess. And then I did a minor in mathematics because it just kind of... It comes along with the baggage of doing all that other stuff.
I had a minor in mathematics, too.
Did you really?
Yeah, major in meteorology.
See, this is an interesting concept, too. Gosh, I feel like we always have so many things to discuss.
I know.
Because this is
We're off track right now.
already, but we'll get back on, I promise. So the concept, there's a lot of individuals on air who there is a degree in just meteorology, like broadcasting, right? Versus you have a degree in the science of atmospheric sciences, right?
Right.
So that's a bachelor's of science from a university, but you entered into this entire profession from a scientific perspective, but then you also were able to do it on the air.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who want to be on the air
Right.
and then try to get the meteorological background, right? Which is
Right.
okay. I'm not adding an opinion into that.
Yeah, I basically got an engineering degree pretty much.
Sure,
At the
yeah.
University of Oklahoma, we had to take Calculus 1, Calculus 2, Calculus 3,
Those are
Engine
fun
Math
ones.
1,
There's a lot of
Engine Math 2.
integrals, yeah.
And because I minored in math, I took Intro to Analysis, and I almost got
Yeah.
a math degree. I was probably one class short of a math degree.
Sure.
So I was that close. I
Yeah.
probably could have just taken one more
Chucked
class.
in a few hours, yeah.
But I got my meteorology degree. I wanted I wanted to talk about the weather. I didn't necessarily want to be on TV. I was scared to death of it. That's a whole other topic.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but
That's kind of an interesting one, yeah.
But when I first started my career, Gary England in Oklahoma was in the
Yeah.
movie Twister. Gary England is a good friend to this day of mine. He retired about 10 years ago or so. It's been 10 years because the El Reno and Moore, Oklahoma tornadoes were in 2013, 10 years ago. And after that is when he retired. It was a really interesting time of his life. But
What was his career then? Was he on air?
He
or-
was on air.
Okay,
Chief
gotcha.
meteorologist, KWTV, Channel 9, Oklahoma City.
Sure, okay.
And an icon down there.
Yeah,
He'll be
it's a great
remembered.
market.
He's one of the more famous meteorologists of all times. But Gary taught me as my mentor how to do severe weather coverage.
Sure.
I learned what I learned from Gary England is immense. I mean, he's one of my mentors, and he literally taught me the best way to do severe weather. And by learning, and I covered a tornado once. I had a raw radar where I saw a tornado once. That's a whole other story. And I was like, wait a second, that's 87 mile per hour winds, because it had two folds on the radar.
Yeah.
A fold on the radar, by the way, is, I think it was like 29 miles per hour. When it went to 29, it had to fold and go back to 1. And so when it went twice, it was 58 miles per hour. And I saw 2 folds and almost to the max of that, which is 87 miles per hour. And I said 87 miles per hour towards the radar and 87 miles per hour away from the radar, right next to each other. I was like, that looks like it might be a tornado. Ooh. And it was in the village, in the Oklahoma City area of the village. It was a small little tornado, but I actually saw it on radar. It was very interesting. But Gary England taught me how to detect them and then how to cover them.
Yeah.
And so I came to Kansas City in 1992. You know, Mike Thompson was chief meteorologist at the station then, so I didn't do a lot of severe weather coverage. And then when I became chief meteorologist in 1998, 1999 at KSHB in Kansas City, that's when I started doing tornado coverage.
Sure. Okay.
So,
what was his biggest piece of advice? What do you think you took away from it most? I mean, obviously, you have your own flair. There's a Lezak flair and personality into it.
He did something that all chief meteorologists could probably learn from. When you're the chief meteorologist, you're the expert right now while the tornado is approaching or not.
Sure.
And so you're the authority, and then the anchor team, which is usually the authority of the news, the anchor man, the anchor woman, and at KSHB, it's Kevin Holmes and Dia Wall right now. And they're amazing. And they're the anchor team. So when there's breaking news, they're going to lead. When there's breaking weather, the meteorologist needs to lead because you're the expert at this. And so I learned from Gary England that you're the lead. You take over. At the same time, I've learned to delegate. So I toss to meteorologist A or B or C.
Sure.
I toss to the anchors. I say, can we take a look at this sky view? Whoa, look at that. That's a wall cloud. It looks like a tornado is developing. And then I'll say, guys, can you stick with that? I'm sort of helping the producers and the directors. Yeah. It's just something I learned from Gary England, and I was really good at that.
Yeah, the delegation seemed, from a viewer's perspective, it always seemed you were able to say, okay, individual so-and-so, can you show us this? But then you're obviously, because you have a ton of streams of data coming into you, just I imagine attacking your senses as you're trying to be on air at the same time. You're trying to project an air of confidence, but hopefully not irrationality, right? But it gives you time to then ingest that stream of data, make better decisions, while somebody else is able to handle the on-air presence for a moment, right?
Right.
So that's got to be a handy skill to be able to. Delegation is a key component
because you might be on for 4 hours, and so
4 hours
or longer,
just vamping.
Some of these meteorologists, when there's a hurricane approaching, they're on for 72 straight hours. Now, granted, I'm sure they take shifts. So you asked earlier, what causes a tornado? Hot and cold air. You know, that's when we distracted a little bit. Okay?
Sure.
Hot and cold air coming together is one thing, but it's air masses clashing.
Yeah, okay.
And what causes a thunderstorm to form, the air has to rise. So when a cold front or a dry line, a convergence boundary, a cold front is where the wind shifts from the south to the north. A cold front is literally that, the front of the cold air.
Sure.
So as a cold front approaches, you have the winds meeting at the surface, the north winds meeting the south winds, and at the ground, the air can't go down.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So when the air converges together, there has to go up. When it rises, the temperature is directly related to the pressure. The pressure is going to fall, and as a result, you end up with condensation and clouds, and maybe a thunderstorm will form.
Sure. Okay.
Once you have a thunderstorm form, this is something that's interesting. I believe every single thunderstorm rotates. Every single one.
Okay.
Okay. I believe that.
It's just how quick?
I've seen the weakest ones when you see the core, the thunderstorm dies, and there's the core in the middle. Well, the air is rising straight up in the middle of a thunderstorm. When you see a dust devil in the field, when there's a little swirl of wind, you look closer, you'll see it's being caused by this column of air going up, and the air naturally rotates around it.
Okay, yeah.
So you have a circulation, even if it's very weak, in almost every single thunderstorm. But in the most powerful thunderstorms, the supercells, that's when the air rises straight up so fast, maybe up to 100 miles per hour, that the air starts spinning real fast, the pressure drops extremely low, and you get your tornado.
So this is a physics question. You know, having the engineering background, I did a lot of physics. What creates a greater intensity? Is it the greater temperature differential? Is it a more volume of air, a greater mass of air? What makes a tornado better or worse, or more dangerous or more treacherous?
Well, on the worst outbreak days, you have conditions where the atmosphere has a natural rotation. You have a southeast wind at the surface, a south wind just above the surface, a southwest wind at really high speeds, maybe at 10,000 to 20,000 feet up, and that natural rotation exists. So when you have an updraft and a thunderstorm forms, it takes that natural rotation, and we can identify what that is, and that leads to the more likely tornadoes.
Wow.
But when you're on television, Bob, 80 to 90% of tornado warnings are false alarms.
Sure, but preparation is key. Is that what we're going off of, right?
Yeah, you have to take these threats seriously.
Because it's difficult. You might want to give a little insight, too, because I don't know, maybe there's confusion. You once had a funny tweet about tacos, right, for a watch versus a warning.
Right.
Can you tell us what makes what? It's an ingredients versus a finished product?
Right. This spring, I'm expecting a few additional threats than the last few years. Kansas City has had a very quiet stretch. The whole
spookily so.
Tornado Alley has been very quiet for about 4 years.
It's a strange thing.
I often say each year, this year is going to be more active, but for 4 years in a row, it has not been.
Right.
I see stronger signs this year for it to be more active. So,
another gutsy call over here.
And Weather 2020 has identified the top 11 severe weather setups, one of which is coming through in this first week of March.
You've done great analysis on Weather 2020 we're putting out. We're doing a lot of work with severe weather. It's because there's a lot of interest in it, understandably so, and I feel like some of your best results have been through cyclic analyses of severe weather threats.
Well, the weather pattern is cycling. Severe weather setups are cycling. Hurricanes are related to other indications that happened earlier. We have a big prediction for one around the second week of September this year to hit Florida between Daytona Beach and Miami. That's a whole other story. And severe weather and everything.
For sure, yeah.
The whole world has the LRC literally describes that. So, but
we describe. So we talk about threats, though, right? Because this is the concept of a watch versus a warning. So we've discussed a couple of times on here how in the LRC we're looking for the recurrence of conditions that will drive weather to reoccur, right? So it's not always 100% guarantee of like, okay, this happened in cycle 1 and 2, and henceforth it's guaranteed to happen in cycle 3 and 4. It means those conditions are going to repeat, and sure, there's the potential for other influences which may cause them to be more or less severe, right? So we look at this from like the recurrence of our severe weather forecast, what you're doing. We're saying the conditions are recurring. Something bad could happen, so it's an increased threat, right?
Right.
And so the National Weather Service now, it's a threat level from what, 1 to
5.
1 to 5,
and they call them marginal risk for a level 1, slight risk for a level 2, a enhanced slight risk is a level 3, a moderate risk is a level 4, and a high risk is a level 5.
And that's a more recent concept. I don't feel like I remember that growing up, that they had a numerical
All those
scale.
other 5, it used to just be high risk, moderate risk, slight risk.
Right.
But in a slight risk day, which is a level 2, it could have conditions favorable for a major strong tornado. It's just that we're not sure they're going to develop. Thunderstorms are going to form. If thunderstorms form in that environment, now we're in trouble, and that has happened. Yeah. So there have been a couple of big days. One of the big Moore, Oklahoma tornadoes was started out with a slight risk, and it got enhanced. But yes, the conditions are there. And just on an LRC note, the conditions might be there for a winter storm on December
Right.
5th, and then when it
Yeah.
cycles back through at the end of January, conditions will be favorable for a winter storm again. But
Sure.
when that pattern cycles back through in July, it's not going to be a winter storm, okay?
Of course.
But
yeah.
the conditions that produce that winter storm will still be cycling through, and when they do, maybe you just get a cold front in July.
Right. That makes sense.
So
it's more seasonal. Yeah.
So, but that's what goes on.
But that's a watch too. So we were sort of talking about the concept of a watch versus a warning. A watch is the conditions are favorable, something could
Right.
happen, you should be
like
alert
your
and aware.
tacos.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
Versus a warning, which means this is something is happening. It's a confirmed event.
So the tacos analogy is you have the lettuce and it's sitting there on a plate, and the cheese and the taco meat, whether it's chicken or regular Taco Bell taco meat.
Sure. Oh, okay.
And
is that a brand?
and tomatoes.
Can we get a sponsorship?
I think we should.
Yeah.
But you have four, 5, 6 ingredients you want to put in your tacos. So there it is. You have a watch. Conditions are favorable for a taco.
Right.
Right. And you have all your conditions there. And now, will they come together? And then someone puts them together, and all of a sudden you have a taco.
Sure.
And then we have a taco warning, and one exists.
And that's just the reality of
All
it.
right.
And that's when. So, let me ask you this. I shouldn't make these assumptions. I assume if a warning is occurring, you better be on air warning people,
Right,
correct?
right.
So I guess what is the threshold that you recall from like your broadcasting career of like, okay, break into everybody's favorite show. You're going to have to endure the tweets and the tweet storm of like, I can't believe you cut into my favorite show of doctors, marrying each other to make sure that I saw that it was raining outside. I mean, this is a common complaint from like the general public of like, I can't believe you're doing this, or that maybe you're being too, I don't know, a little too volatile on this, and you're threatening that this is all going to be bad when in all actuality it's not. Because people have a tendency, I feel like, to think that they are the center of the universe, okay?
Right.
So there's a lot of people sitting there like, well, nothing happened to me, so I am annoyed that you cut into my programming to watch it because somebody else might be under a warning or a higher increased threat, right? So what was that threshold? From a broadcasting perspective, when did they say, all right, Gary, get on the air or get off the air or whatever? And did you have a preference? I mean...
It can depend. I've got my mindset on what needs to be done, but some tornado warnings could look worse than other tornado warnings.
Sure.
But let's say there's a tornado warning for northeast of Kansas City, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's out over rural areas between Chillicothe and the Iowa border.
Right.
But it's technically the viewing area of Kansas City.
Sure.
There's a tornado warning. You should be on. You just have to explain this is over mostly rural areas.
Right.
But if you do live in this area, there is a potential for a tornado. And so you come on and you explain that. Then what happens is people in Overland Park in Kansas City are like, why am I missing my program? This tornado warning is over a farm in northern Missouri. This is ridiculous.
Certainly.
Why are we doing the same coverage? Well, it's a possible tornado warning. And I have been on where there actually is a tornado and we can see it. And people in Kansas City are still upset. And then I have to come on the air while I'm on and say, listen, I know a few of you are upset, but there is a tornado. Okay? There was one. We have damage. Okay? I know it missed your house. You can watch your program another day.
See, I feel like maybe that's why you had a good, a successful career, because the realization that, like, I understand. Some of you might not like that I'm on the air telling you this right now. There's going to be other people that are incredibly grateful, and that's where the balance has to come from. Okay, because you don't want to be looking back and saying, I wish I would have went on the air and maybe fewer people would have gotten hurt or less damage would have.
Especially if someone was killed. Then that's never happened to me. Okay?
Sure, yeah. It's good news.
Fortunately, if I wasn't on and there was a tornado warning, there's never been a situation where I was like, oh my gosh, someone died and I wasn't there to help.
So you err on the side of caution.
Yeah, I think so. On Linwood, Kansas Day, the entire Kansas City television network from
just recently, right?
That was May 28, 2019.
Right, okay, yeah.
Linwood, Kansas got hit. The tornado touched down near Lawrence, and it became an EF4 tornado on the west side of Linwood. And
it's a big event.
We had with the National Weather Service and all of the TV stations and other emergency management, it was a great system. And the LRC actually helped. We knew that day was coming weeks before. And so when it arrived the day before, we identified it as a very good chance of a tornado that day, and it ended up happening. But regardless of the advanced setup and warning that exists with the LRC, that day was a coordinated effort by everyone, and no one died, which with an EF4 tornado destroying homes.
Incredible.
So that's always good news. Now, it could have been a little bit stronger, and sometimes when it becomes an EF5 tornado, then houses are just completely destroyed, and lives are probably going to get lost if you're not underground.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In Kansas City, we do have basements, so we always recommend to go into your basement in that situation. But yeah, it's intense. It's difficult. It's reality TV. It is reality TV.
It's a good way of putting it.
At its most intense.
That's
so when you
very raw.
And when you see your reality TV shows, okay, that have been on, like Big Brother, my favorite show.
Oh, okay.
On CBS, you know.
I don't think I knew that.
RuPaul, I love that reality TV show.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the Drag Race? Yeah.
RuPaul's Drag Race. I love that. But these reality shows, it's real life, it's real TV. But for tornado coverage, it is raw, we're on, and it's intense. And if there really is a tornado, which happens rarely.
Sure.
May 4th, 2003, May 28th, 2019, March the 6th, I think 2017, I think it was. These bigger days in Kansas City, there's actually a tornado. It's difficult. I now know there's a tornado, and if it's heading towards Kansas City, I know people that are now on the path, and it becomes an emotional experience for me broadcasting it. So it becomes real intense, and it's extremely challenging. And when there isn't a tornado or aftermath of a tornado, it looks like we start repeating ourselves over and over again. But watch any breaking news. It's always repeated over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, switch the channel. Do not, I don't think you do this anymore. Switch the channel, okay?
One of these buttons. Yeah. Something along those lines.
Switch the channel and don't.
It's tough. Because it is reality television with very real consequences. That's the irony. Like, reality television is produced to some degree and whatever, and there's an outcome and whatever. But, like, it's not going to affect your day-to-day life. This is reality television with real consequences that happen to people you know, people around you. That's a big burden. I mean, that's a burden to carry, man.
It is.
I don't know. I don't know a lot of people who can really navigate that situation, to be on air for that long,
right?
Taking in that much data and then trying to convey it to people and save lives.
You know, Baba, I think I was really good at it, but I didn't like it.
Oh, well, sure.
So who wants to? We don't. You know, I just want to get you excited about the weather, and when we're in those situations, I think, as I said, I think I'm really good at it.
Yeah,
but I would, you know, I'd rather have us not have to cut into programming and not have a tornado risk.
That's fair.
So, but the last thing we want to do is just, for me, is the last thing I want to do.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate reality of just being, you know, we're all sort of victim to Mother Nature here, I suppose. Yeah. And so, but I think it's good in the end that obviously we've built a system around the concept of trying to alert people. It's unfortunate that there's always going to be people who think that if you're on air, you know, you're trying to be fear-mongering, or you're on air unnecessarily, or that you have something to gain from being on the air.
And never once, ever, in my entire career, did I ever come on the air because just to be on.
Just for fun? Yeah, just to fill an ego,
so right? There are times there's competition.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of lunatic would you have to be like, well, you know what? It's raining outside. I can't wait to just get on the air. I'm on the air every night. I'm Gary Lezak. Everybody knows my name. Why do I need this night now to break in and like fake coverage?
Right. Exactly.
The fact that this has been like a prescribed concept or pathology is mind-numbing. But
now I've retired from TV, so it's up to those guys.
That's a fair point.
And I just know it's extremely challenging.
Oh, sure, man. Well, I always thought you did well from a viewer perspective, because the truth is, you know, you do get glued to. I was a viewer. You get glued to the television because I don't know what's going on. I mean,
that's right. And so here's news directors. You say you get glued to television. So sometimes I think the tornado threat is over, and I'm probably right. In
Sure.
fact, I think I would make that decision. The thunders. First of all, there have been times where the thunderstorm has dissipated. There's no more thunderstorm.
Oh my.
Okay. There's no chance of a tornado. It is gone now. Okay. The thunderstorm is dissipated. All right. Although you have to be careful because as the thunderstorm is dissipating, the tornado might be the last part of it that's spinning out. Okay. Just know that.
Ooh, that'd be tough. Yeah.
Don't say this is not going to hit a town. Okay. I made that mistake once in my
Oh
career.
my.
For one time.
It's a rough mistake,
I don't
man.
know if I want to go there.
Yeah.
But only once a long time ago. But I learned. And, but there's times where, okay, hey, everyone, the risk is over. The thunderstorms are gone. And stay with KSHB 41 or whatever, and we'll keep you advised. Okay? And then I go off, and the news director, oh, my gosh, get back on, get back on, get back on. I'm like, what? We have to come back on? Because the competitors are still on.
Yeah.
The viewers are scared. They're still, they're switching now to the other channels.
Right.
So there's a balance there. So maybe I would go off too early, even though the threat was over.
Sure.
But you have to think about the threat is over, but now you might need to spend the next 10 minutes. Anybody who's coming over to find out, is the threat really over? Maybe you spend 10 more minutes explaining that the threat's over. And then you can go, if the thunderstorms are truly gone, you can go off the air.
Right.
However, if there's lightning and thunder and there's still thunderstorms, people are freaked out. And after you've had a tornado warning, you tend to stay on a little bit longer.
Understandably so, I would say. There's a hangover, a threat hangover.
Yeah.
But okay, so in the business, everybody has a boss, right? I'm sure you had multiple bosses throughout years. I understand. I'm sure you can't get into detail. You're looking at me nervously. You don't have to be nervous. I'm not trying to get you to call out names or anything in particular. But I have to assume that every single director has a different threshold then, too, of like, stay on the air, get off the air. Why aren't you on the air? Why are you on the air right now? Right. So that's its own balancing concept within like a occupational standard, right?
Right. And the news director and the general manager, they are the bosses.
Right.
And so if they want you on, then you should stay on. And,
sure.
And then you can talk to them afterwards if you felt like we did the right thing or not. But regardless, one thing that's a fact, regardless of what decisions are made, all right, after the event, there have been times, and I'll just do one example. May 4th, 2003.
Wow, okay.
That was the day tornado started touching down near Linwood, right near, actually, it started coming down near the Nebraska Furniture Mart and the Legends out there.
Oh, wow.
While the Nebraska Furniture Mart wasn't built yet. It was just a parking lot.
Sure, okay.
The Kansas Speedway was being built. This is May 4th, 2003. And so there is this video that I need to go find of a rear flank downdraft, which is this 100-mile-per-hour wind that's whipping through the car by the car that's sitting there in the parking lot watching this. And as this rear flank downdraft hits, he pans over to the right. This wind is like blowing so strongly, and then there's the tornado.
Wow.
It comes down the Woodlands at the time, captures the tornado.
The horse track.
Yeah, the dog track.
Dog track, I'm sorry.
Race
Yeah.
track and
Crazy.
horse track.
Yeah.
The Woodland surveillance camera picks up the tornado. Is amazing. And you can see a horizontal tube going up the side of that tornado, which is a strong one. It became an EF4.
Golly, really?
One or two people were killed. One person directly by the tornado.
Whoa.
It blasted a Gladstone community after it crossed the river.
Yeah.
Hit Liberty and then lifted.
I remember that. They hit Liberty up around William Jewell College.
Yes.
Yeah, it wiped out like a whole slew of stuff.
They had damage that day. And so I had our weather team there at noon that day.
Okay, yeah.
And we were ready because we just knew all the conditions were favorable. We did a really good job. And the next day, the Kansas City Star, or 2 days later, did an article on it. And they said that Gary Lezak did a great job.
Oh, okay. Whew.
And they did all these things. No, but then the ratings came out.
Oh.
So we did really well, and that was that reporter's observation. Then he saw we were in last place.
Oh, wow.
And he said, after all, I thought that they did a good job, but they actually were the worst. Look at the ratings. When we might have been the best, but we were the worst in the ratings.
Yeah.
And so I get called in. What went wrong? I'm like, nothing went wrong. We were the only team that was there 4 hours early.
Yeah, right.
So we didn't have a helicopter that had the tornado.
Was that a piece of it? That's got to be
one of the things.
Component. Yeah.
What are you gonna watch? So if there's really a tornado. Now-
seeing a tornado from the air is
Now, let me tell
spectacular.
you, Johnny Rollins is amazing. I worked with him at Channel 4
Yeah.
years ago, and he and I had just this great chemistry on the air, and it's
He's great. He's a hoot.
unmatched.
He's
chemistry.
almost as good a shape as you,
I
mate.
know, it's
Yeah,
it's
he's
ridiculous.
a beefcake. Yeah,
he's amazing. But Johnny is an expert at chasing these things.
Yeah.
But the last 4 years, ask Johnny. He's like had almost no work.
just twiddling his thumbs.
no work.
Yeah.
So this year it might be different.
I mean, that's good though, right? I mean, because that means nobody's getting hurt, things aren't
It's
getting destroyed.
great.
Yeah.
My list of favorite kinds of weather. Okay, tornadoes, smack on the bottom. is,
Jeez.
who wants a tornado?
Right.
Only storm chasers want a tornado.
Yeah. Or just chaotic lunatics.
It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
And storm chasers are weirdos, because let me just tell you, most of them.
Well,
Because-
sure.
But because
Is it an adrenaline junkie thing? What are we looking at?
Because they're like, oh my gosh, they're hoping for an EF5 tornado.
Yeah.
Okay. They want
You're
an
right.
EF5 tornado.
Right.
And then when it happens, it's heading towards a town. They're like, oh no.
Yeah, they throw in this little caveat.
Oh
Yeah.
boy. Even though it's fast.
They've been wanting it to happen forever. Yeah.
I shouldn't have called them weirdos. I love you guys. I love you guys.
It's an interesting hobby. It's a hobby, right? You can't make money as a storm chaser.
I saw one tornado, and I hope to never see another one.
Oh, where'd you see it? Where was it?
It was my brother and I went chasing when I switched from Channel 4 to Channel 41 back in 1999. We went chasing in southwest Kansas and Sitka, Kansas.
Wow.
It was an EF3 tornado coming right
That's
towards
a big
us.
one.
And it was, I was so scared. I was going like
Oh,
I
yeah.
was going like 90 miles an hour down the road to get out of it.
Yeah, I don't
And my
blame you.
brother's like, Gary, you can stop. It's crossing the road.
I'm
and I
not
wish I would have
stopping, man.
stopped so I could have watched it. But instead, I was going beeline towards Oklahoma.
Well, that's rational safety,
I
Gary.
was scared. I
Yeah.
was afraid.
Well, I don't blame you. Seeing something like, I mean, that just seems unbelievably supernatural.
Did I answer your questions?
Yeah, I think so. Look, man, I'm always going to want you to take the bait to get more dramatic and more gossipy, because the broadcasting industry as a whole is an interesting onion that I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about but don't get a lot of answers. But I understand too, like, you had a great career, you did a great job, you have a great relationship, you have a lasting relationship with a lot of individuals in the business. Obviously, you don't want to go, we're not out here to sling mud. I don't blame you. Not to imply there is mud. I'm not implying there's
come
any
on,
mud.
Bob.
I mean, but it was still a job. A job's a job.
Oh,
so.
there's lots of stories that'll be in my book.
Yeah, I believe that, man.
So I haven't written the book yet. Just know it'll be there somewhere.
One golden day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe these are just teasers, but because it is just interesting. I've as a member of the community and having watched severe weather coverage for over the years, you wonder, like, who makes that decision? Yeah, and then with the advent of the internet, everybody starts to, everybody has an opinion on how and why and what and where. And
I've been fortunate with all my news directors, and I'm going to throw them all in there, and some are more weather in tune with weather than others.
sure, yeah.
The most recent one that I worked with is just such an in tune with weather. It's amazing. And so, depending on that, most of them, if not all of them, have let me make those decisions.
That's good news.
And,
well, you're the expert.
But
right?
I did tend to to make decisions on the side of caution.
Yeah.
If there's a tornado warning, we would cut in, but I just don't want to scare people.
That's tough. Yeah.
So there's a balance.
You want to warn people, but you don't want to scare people.
There's an absolute balance there.
And it's funny though. Like, well, I'll try to end it with this, because it's a wild concept to hear you say back in 2003 in that tornado event that you were heralded as having this fantastic coverage, but then you still get lambasted in your job because of ratings.
Right.
What a crazy concept. Like, that's a tough thing to reckon with for a career as long as you've had, knowing, because you always keep that in your pocket, I assume, of going like, geez, man,
Right.
I like to think we saved lives that day and did good work for the community and good work for the people watching the station.
Right.
And then you can't win.
I know.
You just can't win.
Hey, listen, that week was that was actually almost 7 straight days of severe weather risks.
Gosh, man.
It was May 4th, 2003.
Yeah.
May 8th, 2003, 5 days later, Lawrence got hit by a tornado. Did you know that?
Really?
5 days after that.
I didn't remember.
And
Yeah.
that was the day I made a big mistake. And here we are to a whole other podcast.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
I should leave.
Gary's mistakes.
What, you
It's
wanna
a
hear-
tiny list.
Yeah,
It's got to be tiny.
Gary's mistake. No, that was one. Just a hint, and we could talk about it someday. But I thought I was thinking that the tornado was going to stay south of Lawrence, but
Yeah.
it turned left.
Wow.
And usually tornadoes turn right. When tornadoes die, they often turn left. And I learned that day, don't ever say you're safe. Now listen, 20 minutes
Sure.
before it hit, I reversed what I said.
It's good.
So I gave 20 minutes warning anyway,
Yeah.
but I got blasted for it.
Oh, man, that's tough.
So people
See,
remember that for a long time.
You hear that too? Like, don't ever say you're safe. Like, this is tough because
I get real precise.
Well, certainly so. You kind of I think you wear bold predictions.
Until the
like,
thunderstorm is gone. Until the thunderstorm is gone.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Hey, Brett Anthony, we're on the forecast with Gary Lee's at podcast.
Can we plug this guy
Can
in?
I call you when we're done? Okay, bye.
Brett Anthony, everybody.
So I even answer the phone. Brett Anthony,
This guy.
amazing. He works with Weather 2020 also. But Brett Anthony,
Great meteorologist, great guy.
so call me. I'll answer during our. We'll take calls one day.
We should take calls. That'd be great. Yeah.
Can we do that?
Well, it's up to you. I can be an open book. I don't know if you can be an open book, but we'll get there.
Hey, we'll get there soon.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. I think we better wrap for now.
Should we wrap? Okay, that's fair.
Because this could go on for 2 more hours.
I know. Well, these things interested me. When I got to know you, then you gave me little insights and there's stuff like, oh man, I had never even considered ratings on severe weather coverage and having the balancing act. So I find it interesting. I don't know if everybody else will find it interesting. I hope everybody find it interesting
That's
and get some
fascinating.
answer questions.
And in the next decade or so, weather people, that's a whole other discussion. Weather people, meteorologists have become so much more important than ever before.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
For the newscast.
Yeah.
So and just like I said, it's breaking. It's always live reality TV.
Yeah.
The weather is always breaking. When I say new data is coming in, it is always coming in.
Sure.
The weather's
There's new data
always
sources.
changing.
We have
Yeah.
more sources of data now, so you always have more data to analyze. Yeah.
And that'll be in a future podcast.
Oh gosh, that'd be a long one.
So Bob Lyons, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thanks for letting me come
Yeah.
back.
So he's usually the pessimist and I'm the optimist. You're pretty optimistic today.
Today, you think so?
Yeah.
Well, I'm more inquisitive.
Yeah.
Maybe that goes in the basket?
The inquisitive pessimist.
Yeah, there you go.
IP.
Yeah, I can work with that. Sure.
All right. Thanks a lot. Hey, listen, remember it's sponsored by Results
Oh, yeah.
Personal Fitness. And that's on 135th and Metcalf.
Excellent.
Go to Results. They've got great trainers there. Get your personal trainer and Uphold Home.
Uphold Homes, beautiful.
All right.
And somebody's call. I want to sponsor. Let's get sponsored. Let's get a health insurance. I need health insurance.
Yeah?
I need better health insurance. I have garbage. Let's get a health insurance company
Yeah.
to sponsor us.
If you're
That'd
in
be
health
great.
insurance, sponsor us.
Yeah, there we go.
Come on.
It's that
United-
easy, right?
United Healthcare.
Yeah. Blue Cross Blue Shield. Are they
We
still
shoot
here?
for the moon here.
Yeah, man, we're getting nuts.
All right. Thanks for watching
Thank
and
you.
listening to the forecast with Gary Lezak and Bob Lyons.